Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Stephanie Garst, and I'm the Executive Director of the U.S. Play Coalition. So excited to have you here for our featured session today with Yesim Kunter, play theorist and play expert extraordinaire. I have no doubt that everyone will enjoy hearing her every year. She is with us. We are just honored, and it's such a treat to get insights from someone who has such a breadth and depth of experience in the real world of toys and design and sort of the side that many of us don't get to see. And so this is a really unique perspective that she brings. And with our theme of play is survival, I think that what we have all really come to realize is how our mental health has been impacted, especially in this last year. And so thank you, Yesim, so much for being with us today. I want to give you plenty of time to just wow us and share your expertise. We will have everyone's cameras off and muted for now, and in the end, we can bring people on to ask questions and to engage. But for now, I'd like to say welcome to Yesim Kunter.
Thank you very much. I'm always excited, as you know, being here, and this year it's especially exciting to be here because after a whole year of craziness going on and looking at design and how it affects us became kind of like a more major importance for me. Just to give you a background information of where I have been in the last 20 years is I worked for Toys R Us as a concept designer, and then I worked for Lego as a concept designer. Then I worked for Hasbro as a futurist, which means looking at 5 to 10 years ahead of where the world of play is going and how toy design can be shaped so that we can, have much more relatable kind of toys that the children can play. And it was always for me very important that we need to understand the future in order to understand what we should be giving in the hands of our children. And so, for example, I've done a lot of learning platforms, but from that learning and from those insights, also recently being very much interested in mental health, designing for mental health and well-being, and also illustrating, I start to see all these kind of, I'm just going to call it as the semiotics of play, and how actually we need to be careful with how do we design and why we design in certain ways, and how the design actually helps us to motivate us in a playful manner. So today that's what I'm going to mostly talk about. I do have a lot of toys around me, so I'm going to show them, and at the end maybe we can talk more in depth about them. So the image you are seeing is actually from Lorenzo Mattotti, and it's from Hansel and Gretel. It's very dark, but it's a very different way of looking at how do we actually communicate certain feelings with children. And from this, I'm going to go into one insight. As we all know, is this whole year, the mental health of the population has been in a huge decline. There's a big problem of, especially within the schools, there is not enough resources to give and create understanding the emotions and how do we actually deal with them. Although we do talk about it and the importance of it, but it's just like we know that there's a huge decline coming up. The other thing is, which was very interesting, because of that, we did start to see like there are so many brands talking about the burnout and taking the pressure off. And before we even come to the children, it's we have seen there was a amazing amount of like kind of change with the adults actually being interested in play and playfulness so that they can actually lift off the stress from their own lives. Before I come and show some of these examples and how it is changing and talking about design, I'm just going to talk about how we actually think as designers. So the first thing we usually always look at is the global trends, what is going on, what are the stresses and how it is impacting us. And usually what happens, they always actually give us a shape to the form, color, interaction, and texture of the design. And we talk about the semiotics of it. So for example, if there's a huge cultural differences going on, then those different cultures will bring in different kind of color understanding. So for example, in the Scandinavian countries, you would start to see much more pale colors in comparison to, for example, the US, for example, because it will be much more bolder and much more stronger colors. And so they actually shape the way we really design, and we really give the feeling, and we talk about the feeling. And also at the same time, it also creates a different ways of understanding how we even design the playful items, the tools. So when I talk about it, it's kind of like the complexity of it. So for example, there are so many spinning tops. This one is from Germany, and I really love it because it's super kind of like strategic in its way, and it has some kind of light in it. So it makes you feel like you are, the cultural differences also gives a different way of understanding how we actually even play and interact with different kind of toys. So this one is from, actually I bought it from here in the UK, and it's super cool. I'm just going to show how it works. And you can see its color combinations and everything. So, so what happened in the last year is we start to see a huge kind of like a percentage of the puzzle selling, and these are mostly really designed for adults so that they can actually find a way to have fun and actually kind of take off the stress, and you will see much more sophistication in the design language. This one is, for example, the first one on the left side is the Bowie, and it's a jigsaw puzzle, and it's like really highly designed piece. And then Inobi wooden puzzles, I know I have so many friends who are around like above 40s, and they loved playing with this puzzle. And it's kind of like it's giving them some kind of a focus point. And also, if something is beautiful to look at, then it becomes easier for them to kind of get engaged to it. So that's why the style of it makes such a big difference. And it's also, when we talk about the mental health, these are very therapeutic in its own way of the minute you start to focus, you forget what is going on in your life. And it kind of makes you kind of so much better in its sense that given that time period, you can actually become in a different place and ease your own anxieties. The other thing, which was, I'm sure you have seen, is like, for example, Lego lovers, they've seen a lot of products. And again, these are really designed for adults. What I like about these kind of more focus on the adult play is because if the adults are actually playing, they now know how to actually deal with their emotions and the stresses so that they can actually show and explain it to their own children. So it's kind of like a nice circle that it's kind of becomes, it's a nice way of teaching each other how to deal with it. The other area, which was, we have seen amazing, again, kind of a percentage high, is the outdoor toys. And the outdoor toys is because, especially in the UK, that I can talk of because I was here during many of our lockdowns. It's kind of like the only way that you can actually deal with the whole issues and boredom and the stresses is actually being outdoors and playing. And Crayola came up with this washable sidewalk, for example, chalk. And we even saw on the sidewalks, like there were so many kids playing and drawing rainbows just to give some kind of a community, a cultural kind of positive effect. The bunch of balloons have been out there for a couple of years, but these type of toys have been a lot in the recent year. And as you know, we all know, it's the minute you start to play, it becomes, and the minute you start to laugh, it's super contagious. So it becomes much more easier to cope together with all these kind of in a humorous way. The other areas that we have seen is for example, the games. And as you can see, like Animal Crossing especially was one of the biggest hits because it has a nature, it's digital, maybe you can't go out, but at least you can imagine there's some kind of freshness coming in. So from a design language, you see a lot of water, for example, water images. You see a lot of greenery, a flow of the some kind of water, or some kind of a connection with the cute animals. And the cuteness not necessarily being very much childish or babyish, but it is actually kind of giving some edginess in a way that it's also cute, but also refreshing. And the other thing which was interesting with the Animal Crossing is the way actually they talk. There's no proper language. They do have their own language, which kind of makes it a bit more like a music in some ways. So this was for all ages, very interesting. And even when we are designing and we are thinking of the mental health related kind of design problems or any kind of things that we need to look at as form, it becomes the smoothness and some kind of a making you kind of feel in the fantasy world gives you some kind of a boost in your own way of thinking. Roblox is mostly for younger children. I mean, it's for younger, when I say younger children, it's like a 12, 8 plus. They also became such a huge thing. This is the reason is because as a design piece, it was mostly giving everyone a space to design. So you can personalize and you can create your own games, which means it gives you kind of ownership and then ownership of control in some ways. So that's why they actually won the hearts of most people. TikTok, I'm sure you have seen it, but I'm coming and looking at this, and not just TikTok, but the similar ones like the YouTube or any kind of movies, like the small snapshot of videos, is giving kind of like a humorous way of interacting with each other and laughing together, creating small challenges, which actually gives you some kind of a closure. Like when it ends, there's some kind of a process and there's a way of understanding what is going on. And then at the end, it's kind of like connecting with others that are very similar to you. Fortnite was also very interesting during this time because they created kind of communities within the game platform. So the communities, for example, because nobody could go any kind of concerts or anything like that, the concerts became actually taking place within the game consoles, platforms. So Marshmallow Mashup was one of them, for example. There was a huge concert took place, and there were so many participants from the game came in and listened in, and they become a part of this whole thing. As a design element, again, this is not maybe just about talking about the form or the color or anything like that, but it's mostly as a system, how it's been created and how it kind of gives a space for others to come in and kind of become a part of something. And that's been hugely helpful for most people because there were a lot of people scattered all around and they are not kind of connected to each other in physically, but at least on the platform they are there and they are enjoying a kind of like a unified experience. For the younger ages, this one, if you haven't seen it, it's amazing. It's the Headspace and Sesame Street. They came together and they created this monster meditation. And on the YouTube, there are small videos that you can actually watch. They are super cute. And also it gives you, even as an adult, I kind of feel like so connected to it because it's so humorous and funny, but at the same time, it teaches you how to, for example, breathe. And as you know, for the younger ages, it is really important to teach them how to calm down, how to actually manage your emotions, and how to understand, what is going on. And the mindfulness is becoming another topic that most of the even preschoolers are learning about it. So it's a really nice way of actually teaching. And again, from a design point of view, when I look at it, it's blue, and the blue color calms you down, and the green color refreshes. So it's usually, they are very much bold, and in the way they are kind of used, it's kind of making you feel like very much refreshed, and it doesn't have any kind of all of a sudden weird shapes that's going to wake you up. So it's kind of giving you that kind of subtle way of saying, calm down. Exactly the same thing with the Moshi kits. They are great because it's soft colors, even though it's in the dark time. So it's kind of like a sleep. It gives you the sleepiness kind of feeling, and it's very soft. But also it's not too much crazy details, so it makes you feel kind of calm. And this is for sleep, of course. The other thing, which is like, in the mental health and well-being, the inclusivity piece has been super important. And it's in the last whole year and before also, it was one of the main topics that makes you feel like you are a part of this community. So Barbie and Barbie actually has been launching these kind of like a different variety of different characters. But this year also they came with this kind of unisex Barbie characters. So what it does give you from a design perspective, again, it gives you your own voice. The person who is actually playing with it will have their own voice, that they can actually put their own personality into it. So whether they want to keep, if it's, there, and also this, not to forget, this generation is very much gender fluid. I mean, all the research we have done in the last 1 year, we came always upon these kind of like conversations with with this age group, between especially we call them the generation alpha. They keep saying that, they want to be identified with their hobbies, their skills, and they want to be actually seen as, they don't want to be identified or even put into a box of what kind of gender and roles they are coming from. So they want to experience so many different things. They want to explore, and they want to have their own way of creating their own personality, but through the experiences. So that's why this was a really interesting product to come up, but it was really needed by the generation alpha. Um, biggest trends that we all look at always before we design and come up with these kind of suggestions, we look at these kind of what's going on. And we know, in 2020, nature was huge importance. This is like the beginning of, I'm talking about like February. And now, and all the toy design fairs you can imagine has been canceled. But I know the nature is the top of the trend, and not just because of. So when we talk about nature, it's from the play perspective, or even from the toy design perspective. All the things that you will be designing, like the outdoors topics, they need to have this kind of flexibility and understanding the nature and almost appreciating nature and its power, but also what kind of tools you can bring in and who are you going to play it with. So that's why kind of like the balloon games, or things that you are going to be run around, or even maybe kind of like a better bicycle or scooters, or sliding units, and all of them are becoming even more important. And how they are designed, it needs to be also thought about, like the people who doesn't have that much of a big space, but they will still look for places that they can go and enjoy the nature and play within that. Like that's why one of the great example is Glow Bubbles. This is coming from 2019, and they were award winner. And I'm sure this year they are going to be probably played a lot. So this is like a glove, and you wear it, and the content of it is inside it. Then you can actually take it out, and then when you wear the packaging itself, you can actually create all these billions of bubbles. And I've seen, and I played it with so many kids, and they go crazy. They enjoy it because this is something like a puppet, but it's actually making bubbles, and it's super fun, and they run around. So that's why in this kind of a design element is how do you actually create that motivation? How do you actually create that kind of playfulness so they can also experience their own freedom of fun as much as they can? Makers, DIY, it's been going on a lot in the last 10 years, actually even 15 years. But last year, all of a sudden everybody became experts in so many ways of making things. And I think it's also a really great way of understanding, all the things that you design and create, and that when you share it with other people, it gives you a much more of self-respect, and kind of like a performing it and sharing and learning from each other also gives you a little bit more of control again, and also inspiring each other, and seeing that you can make different things. It's always amazing. And so we start to see lots of kind of platforms. One of them I even use it is like Art Enthusiast in London, and it was all about like a drawing, for example, Impressionists, and then you will have like 30 people, and they're all designing with you, so you can share and see it, and you feel like you are a part of this environment. Emotional currency is huge. This is a very old movie, but I'm just going to come to the point, like how do we actually create toys or card games or just games that we can actually understand our emotions, and also design for the empathy, for example, or the subjects that matters for children, and for them to understand each other so much better. And there are a lot of kind of products kind of people are trying, but most of the time in the commercial world, it comes in as like a humorous and funny, and it's not really tailored for that, but it might be easily used for that. So I'm just going to show, actually, I'm going to show towards the end, there are kind of different card games that can be used for the emotional currency. Of course, we see a lot of slime-related toys, but and it's not just the slime; it's just play. So, which means it's kind of like a raw material, and I'm going to show you one of my raw material, which I love, is the kinetic sand. And as you know, this is super therapeutic. It's amazing to play with something like this. Even, I mean, like 1 second you are kind of playing, and maybe you don't need to give any kind of shape, or there's no end result. It's the same with the slime. It actually calms you down. And these kind of toys, or let's say products, they are selling a lot, and it's super great. It's really amazing. I just love them. And so when we come to the, like, this is what's going on in the world, but when we come to the, as a designer, what do I look at as design and motivation and materials, texture and color? So I start to put these kind of like a beautiful illustrations, because I'm also very much interested in the illustrating in the right way for children to communicate good art, and also to give them kind of like a perspective of looking at different things. And it's a storytelling also. So this is from Tommy Ungerer. It's the Three Robbers. And what I like about this is that I think it's crucial to show children that no matter what one's flaws are, there's always a way to survive and win by being different and making the best out of what one has. So it's kind of like the storytelling. What are the messages that we give to children, even in the, for example, if it's a card game or if it's a book or if it's kind of like play sets, because the play sets have their own secret underlying storytelling. And that's what is really important when we give it to them and when we design it. What are these kind of important messages we are trying to give, and how are we actually motivating them to play? So I'm just going to show you, actually, I wasn't planning, but this is, for example, the Artemis Playmobil character. And it's quite interesting. It's just one character, but it's Artemis. And I have never seen in any kind of a play set there will be like goddesses. And you will be talking about, for example, a character like Artemis, who is kind of the nature and who is very independent and very much. So it gives you already a story by just being one character. And it adds a lot of small hidden messages. This one is also from Lisbeth Zwerger, is The Wizard of Oz. As you can see with the beautiful drawing is also suggesting, a different style and kind of pointiness, usually because in the commercial world, we will have so much more softer, and we always make it more like a sugarcoat the design, and actually giving them more reality and showing them a little bit of more reality, and preparing them to the world of how to deal with your own personality and understanding is actually going to be really helpful for their own kind of development. And that's why I love Winnicott's this word is that it is in playing and only in playing that the individual or adult is a bit creative and to use the whole personality, and it's only being creative that the individual discovers the self. So we need to be giving space when we are designing for children. We shouldn't be giving, and we call it like a we call this like a deliberately incomplete. So you don't completely give the whole story, you don't completely design the whole thing, but you give a partial place that the child can actually go in and create their own way of understanding and playing with it. So that's why it's like the kinetic sand, and like even just giving this raw material is actually almost like deliberately incomplete. So it kind of gives you the material and you can do whatever you want, versus something that's already too much structured that you are actually, directing their own play. The other very important part is giving is fantasy, and enough fantasy and reality for children when you are designing. So I was just listening to this talk yesterday, and it was very much talking about, we are giving them all these good things and everything is going to be nice and it's going to be always going to be pretty. And I think it's kind of giving them enough of a little bit edginess just to show, these are the realities and there's some kind of a fantasy, and you can learn how to deal with your emotions rather than actually sugarcoating them and always, protecting them. Then once they are outside, they are going to be all of a sudden in this kind of not knowing how to deal with the emotions. And that's the time I think we do get a lot of mental stresses, and because we don't know how to deal with it. So that's why it's kind of really important to be able to give enough space for children to actually describe their own way of making it. So like this is the Javier Zabala's drawings. They all have like this sketchy, and it's very much like the different textures and different colors and different way of expressing a certain way of feeling and different kind of images, which actually gives a way of understanding there are certain things can exist in so many different ways. And also this deliberate incompleteness actually helps them. And most of my actually work really comes from some of these play workshops, which I've done with children. And this is from a play workshop I've done in Turkey. And we have given them all these kind of different materials and asked them to break it and make something out of it. And we were asking them to create a future of schools and what they are thinking about it. And what is really important, and what I realized, that's why for me design is super important when children are kind of trying to talk about their own way of looking at things and their own understanding of the future, or even their emotions and how to handle it. The materials that we give to them, the color, the form, the functionality of objects, it inspires them. It gives them it also gives them the curiosity to actually look beyond that and try to find their own way of using it. So this was amazing for me because we had so many different materials at this workshop and so many different colors, and the way they were looking at these objects and analyzing them and trying to find the right piece to make their own way of describing the future of school was just it was just super amazing, and how they are describing and explaining it. So that's why I think it's really important what type of things we give to them is going to inspire the way they think and the way they are going to make sense of who they are, and that's going to be very important. Some of these materials, usually what I use is the balloons and wooden blocks and a lot of colors and sometimes no colors, sometimes strings, and sometimes it's kind of like more slimy things, because again, it's like when we talk about our own thoughts, for example, like let's say balloons, it's amazing because usually people, when they talk about it and they use it, they either put their hopes inside those balloons or they sometimes put their anxieties. It's always a capsule. It's a way of holding something. So it's metaphorically and symbolically. We all learn from very much like the sensorial level. And then all of a sudden these objects really becomes almost projection of our thoughts. So that's why it's kind of like the types of materials we give it becomes it eases them way of speaking. It becomes their language. Same with the aluminum foils, and I love foils because they really easy to shape and easy to talk over and easy to make people feel okay, even it doesn't look like anything, it's still something. So it's kind of like, it's like the kinetic sand. It's a very raw material. And also blocks, or the way they actually kind of being used. So in design, for example, we do know like a radial opening. For example, on the right side, it's a PR agency, but I can see it was used by, for example, it can be used by a child talking about their feeling at school, and it becomes easier for them to actually almost talk over it and understand what they are saying. Once you know how the design elements actually helps. And also when we talk about these sensorial objects, you know, the way we see them, it's the way they are actually almost motivating and almost the way it kind of makes us feel. So for example, with the kinetic sand or with the elastic pieces, it becomes very much reward. The reward is always there. It doesn't you don't have to do anything. Just by touching it or just by playing with it, the whole reward is very much it's super fast. It kind of comes back to you immediately, because it's very sensorial and it's very much easy to get something out of it. And the textures are really important. The color is also very important. So yeah, and also even the sound of it, like for example, with this one, the minute you touch, the sound of it is like there's some sand because they are kind of texturally feeling. And you will see children listening to these kind of things. They will be like looking at it every minute, and they are going to be like exploring and being fascinated by the whole feeling of it. And that's why we feel much more happier at the end. And these are the small details, but when we design, we will be taking care of them. Like we will be really paying attention to these. You know, the fidgety pieces, and every time you look at them, why it's kind of like an anti-stress, for example, is because I don't have exactly the same ones, but I have these. So they are kind of like small blocks. They are all magnetic, and you know, the minute you are at, you know, in front of you, it's kind of like a repetitive, and it becomes very easy to carry. It's very intuitive, and the sound of it is so fun. So there's some kind of a really quick, impulsive way of getting some kind of gratification from it. Interestingly, again, we start to see these kind of smell related and scent related kind of products because we are so in need of getting these sensorial motivation, sensorial kind of feedback. So I call these semiotics of play, and it's really important because that's kind of like a taking you somewhere else. It's kind of creating either fun, either kind of unexpected situation, and it's kind of wiring your mind with this kind of like a surprise, and that keeps you much more motivation. It motivates you. So I don't have it, but I would love to have this Crayola silly scents. It's the stinky ones, for example. So it's like things that you wouldn't expect to have it. And or the Play-Doh created these grown-up scents. So it's kind of like the cafe latte and different types of it. So it's more for towards adults. So we do see this kind of like a sensorial happiness kind of going in all directions with all ages. And the playfulness is catching up with all ages. And this is really because of, I think we do realize with the mental health and the issues with all these kind of stresses, we do need kind of playfulness in a second of our, like in a couple of minutes in our lives, in order to get the stress off from ourselves. And when we see these kind of like pieces, I would always look at these very young children and their toys, and they are always sensorial, and they are always bright. It doesn't have to be bright, but there are always different colors, and there's always different textures and modularity and all these kind of pieces that comes together. So it makes something very desirable, and it makes it playful. It takes you from your normal daily life to somewhere else. So for example, I'm going to show you this. This is a very nice maze. If you haven't played it, I would say try it. It's really fun. You can imagine a 6 months old will be playing with it, not necessarily doing exactly the game itself, but a 90-year-old will be playing with it as well. Why is that? And this is because first, the colors are interesting. It is very motivational. There is a sound, and also there's some kind of objective. The objective is very hard, but you can do in certain levels of them. So it's super motivational in a sense of playfulness. And this one really is actually coming from this light, because we are really actually we are still children. We don't really change. We do have these kind of initial kind of feelings of looking at objects that makes us feel happy. So for example, like these are, it's a game, and it's called Babel Pico. And so you try to solve it, but as the pieces, you feel it. They are wooden, they are kind of really nicely holding together, They do have softness. The colors are very much talking for the, for adult age. It's much more subtle colors, but it takes you to something which is very familiar, coming from a very young age and taking you to this kind of like a playfulness and connecting you to your younger times. And again, when I look at these kind of drawings, again, the textures, the way it kind of happens in the 3D with different colors and textures, and the way it comes to on the 2D, it makes it, you can feel it. It takes you actually to there, and you kind of feel like connected to this kind of a texture and understanding the language of it, language of the graphics, basically. And that's really important to keep you being curious and keep you kind of engaged to the daily life. It's the same with the textures. We do see a lot of them these days. So I'm going to talk about like the recent products that I've been working on, and I'm collaborating with the Book of Beasties, and this is their design. I just want to introduce how they use different kind of characters and how they use this is really for understanding your emotions and different anxieties and feelings. So they all have different kind of characters, and those characters have different kind of emotional issues. And how they do it is with all the things that I've been talking about, with all these kind of design and texture and play. It's a combination of all of them basically coming together. So for the young children, for them to kind of be motivated and learn something, it needs to be very much related to their daily life, the things that they do and have fun and enjoy. So a character like this, for example, if they have some kind of an anxiety problem, let's say this character, I don't really know if this is the one, but if they have a problem, what they can do is create a sailboat. This is the game's initiative. It's like you can create a sailboat and then you can blow air. So that activity plus the character and its story actually teaches you something really important, which is like how to behave, how to breathe, and how to control your breathing thing. And that breathing, for example, teaches them how to actually manage your emotional anxiety. And once children know how to deal with their own kind of situation and learning from different characters and storytelling and looking at these images and understanding what is going on and how they are solving their problems, then it becomes for them easier to understand what they can do when it comes to them. So this is more like a, preventing anything that can happen. This is more of for them to learn how they can actually manage their own issues. So this is what I'm working on these days, and this one is kind of showing sleep and for the children. And this is for me it was very interesting because between the age of 3 to 6 they can actually learn how to go to sleep. And it's not an easy thing. It's usually a chaos for this age group. But if you teach them to learn how to play this before, for example, going to sleep, and understanding their own kind of the way of calming themselves, first being active, then a little bit calming, and learning how to be mindful about it, then it becomes easier. So for that reason, the colors were usually used with the purple colors. I'm trying to make them look a little bit more, and the characters are already designed before, so I'm trying to make them as relatable. And also the stories are to be actually making, taking some of the textures and taking some of these kind of activities, like again, breathing, imagining clouds. So all giving these kind of like a small fantasy pieces to the children so that they can actually start to imagine for themselves. So this is kind of like, I always feel we as designers, we are creating almost like a ways of thinking. And that's why we need to be designing the pieces in a way that it can actually help children so that they can manage their own fears afterwards. The other design, which I love and I want to mention, is Asibrak. This is a complete different age group. This is much more older ages. And they have been using the, for example, this is games for change. So any kind of conflicts and issues and everything, they are designing through the, they are playing, and they are by playing, like this is very political. So they understand issues and conflicting situations by playing to understand both sides and to respect both sides. So there are really great storytelling, and there are great kind of play pieces that comes with the Asibrak's games in the world these days. And so I just want to end my talk with this, but before that, also I want to talk about plush toys that can be used for helping children. And this was, I was again at the toy fair last year, and I was talking with the Folkmans, and they said that they use puppets for children who had really traumatic issues, and they are excellent for them to talk over their any issues, because it becomes easier for them to talk over any kind of third object, because they are kind of there in their fantasy world, and it becomes easier for them to talk over. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to go deep dive with them. Thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you, Yesim. I was taking some notes. Not, I don't have the best handwriting, so I'm always like, can I read my own notes? But I am so grateful for you sharing today, because, again, we go as a parent, as an educator, we go into stores, we look online, and we're always trying to find the things. And it's so interesting, especially to look back at the year that we've had and to see how everything that's going on in our world is impacting our obviously our kids, but then the toys and how they are starting to better reflect the needs of our kids. Even, like you talked about, different ages, different abilities, different identities, and fluidity. And so fascinating. And of course, with the makers and the DIY, and especially being able to use toys in a way to manage and understand all the emotions that kids in a quote unquote normal year might be managing less in this current situation. So just thank you. I like I said, I love deliberately incomplete. I wrote down things like, we're still only children. I mean, just sort of thinking about all of the wisdom that you shared, and I'm grateful for that. I know that we have some questions, and I want to actually, if people want to ask their own questions, you certainly are welcome to. Angela, I see you have one. Maybe you would like to hop on and say hello and ask your question, perhaps. Maybe not. Or, yep, there she is.
Sorry.
Yeah, put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I have my camera on one side, but the screen on the other side. So it's like, which side do I look at? I'm kind of throwing myself off. No, I found it really interesting. The kinetic sand. My son is twice exceptional. He's 11, and he really enjoys that tactile feeling. So I really connected with what you were saying about that. And so I was kind of, so I made that connection. So I was wondering if that's ever part of therapies, or like some of these materials that you're talking about. He also does the fidget spinners and that kind of thing. And so I was wondering about the extension of these into therapies.
Yeah, I mean, they do use it actually, yes. Unfortunately, none of them are designed for that specifically. They are, you know, in the commercial world, it's really hard to go and design for specific areas. I do have ADHD, which is interesting. You mentioned that. And I was reading a couple of theories about ADHD and play, because it's really hard to find, but there are some case studies. And one of them is the like kinetic sand, or playing with sand, or any kind of, you know, tactile elements and compounds. It's really good for us, no question. The other thing which is great is actually running around, being outdoors, because, you know, even the daydreamer types, it's, you know, you want to be outdoors and much more moving around, and that's why I do the cold water swimming, I guess. And so it kind of helps the frontal lobe to kind of calm down. I think that's the whole reason. The other things you can use, slimes, or even like a more dexterity needed kind of play. So active play, you know, when we look at the literature in play, the 5 types of play, the active play is actually not just about running around, but it's also dexterity one. So it helps so much.
I know Sharon had a question as well. That might be a follow-up to that.
Hi, you won't let me start my video. So, but hi,
Oh.
you're such an inspiration. I love hearing you talk. My kids were talking and I said, I only get to hear her speak once a year. Please let me listen. But anyway, I was really taken by the term semiotics of play and this whole idea of connecting our sensorial memories and experiences with playfulness. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about the notion of semiotics of play.
Sure. I mean, I kind of made up that word. I mean, the word is there. It's just semiotics of play. I kind of merged it basically because I was doing a project for the. So I was inspired by packaging design. You know, in the packaging design, if you want to make it much more playful, you really have to understand the semiotics of it, which is the colors, the graphics, the texture, the way that you are going to open it, the thing that you are going to eat. I've done a lot of projects with like the snacks, for example. Snacks are interesting areas because, you know, you get addicted to it and you want to eat it more and more. It's awful to say that, but in order to create that, there's a playfulness in it, and that playfulness makes the addiction, and that is the semiotics of it, I think. So even the
really
slightest
powerful.
sound, like for example, it is sadly it is super powerful, but I think it's good for the mental health also. Like this one, for example, do you hear the sound of it? That makes you feel like you want to play more. If it wasn't that strong, I don't think they designed it by knowing it. It just became accidentally. But we sometimes use those things, like what kind of, like the way you open, for example, a box. For example, iPhone boxes. When you open it, there's some kind of vacuum, and you hear that sound, right? That's on purpose done, definitely. So you get addicted to it.
I just think that's so powerful because I look at play in the classroom and using play to support learning. If we could get them addicted to learning through play, that would be exciting.
Yes. Yeah, that would be exciting. I mean, definitely. That's why I think it's really important what kind of design you do and you put in front of children. If the pieces you put in front of them to count are interesting and you want to touch them, you are going to play with them. It's that easy. If for example, the graphs and everything you make is kind of beautiful, you are going to look at them. If it's just boring, you are not going to look at them. I wouldn't. I didn't. That was the case.
So you think that's more like a engagement at the time, like it's what draws the attention, or is that more long lasting, like the idea of play flow, like it keeps the attention, or is that what connects? Is that the hook?
I think it's both. It's the hook, but if you want to create a more sustainable and the longevity, I think you need to create much more than that, which is kind of like you need to create addiction. That's why the semiotics of play for me is quite interesting, because the addiction comes from the ritual, right? You want to make that the repetition of it. You want to create more and more, and you want to do it more, even more. So if it doesn't become pleasurable, then you are not going to go back to it. It's just going to end and it's going to finish. But if there's subtlety and it's not making, so that's why for me it's really important. Deliberate the incompleteness is very important for me. If you can give that space for the person, like child, adult, whoever it is, then they are going to feel like they have the ownership, and the engagement will be much more stronger because it's done by them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's a very interesting way of looking at it, and it's very cultural also, not to forget. You have to understand so many different layers of it when you are designing. Who is your audience and what are they interested by? That's why I talked about the Scandinavian. They want to look at more subtle and sophisticated design versus who is from, let's say, in the US. You want to see it much more bold, bigger. There's a way of understanding what is powerful, right? That it's a cultural difference. And I mean, there's no one is better than the other one. It's just what it is.
Pat, did you have a question? Oh, you're muted. Hold on.
Hi, everybody. I'm enjoying this so much, and I typed slow, so I didn't get it all in there. But oh, Yasmin, Yesim. I sorry if I mispronounced.
No, that's fine. Don't worry.
Oh boy. What I wanted to say was not only with toys, but with activities and games and children and adults, I have observed over and over, and also with myself, if I had a good time, I want to do it again. I'm actually right now in sweaty tennis clothes because friends said, you must come out and play tennis earlier.
Oh,
So
nice.
I've been on the computer too much, watching these wonderful presentations. But what do you think it is that it was particularly with toys that does it, that gets people addicted?
Well, I mean, depends on toy to toy and to the person, but I think there's the fun part of it is the most important thing, definitely. You want to feel you are having fun. And sometimes it's a very much quick gratification, like quick win is really important. I mean, I really love spinning tops, but it's just me. And it's a repetition of it. It makes me feel like I love to have them all the time. And the surprise, because it looks static, but then the minute you kind of put it into play, it becomes super interesting. It's a character situation also, and some toys are super amazing, like Legos. You can do so many different things with them. I mean, not necessarily all Legos, I'm just saying construction toys, let's say. And I think the ones that doesn't go on is the ones super structured ones, as you know. I mean, if they are so structured, if there's a lot of story behind and it's already given by the person who had designed it, it becomes just a thing which is staying there, and you don't play with it. Then there's nothing is going on.
Well, I'm about to open a can of worms, and maybe I shouldn't, but I'm just going to say this anyway. What you just said, you actually just said two things that you mentioned Legos or just building things, and then how if something is just very structured, how you won't continue to play with it. And I think about some companies, don't have to name names, that have beautiful packaged things with very prescribed ends to them, and kids spend a lot of money on them to do them, and then they never touch it again. And I think what's so funny is my husband has a whole bunch of old school Legos, big from his childhood, and my children and he and I, we were sitting in the middle of the floor, and they struggled to come up with, it was like, oh, just build a, you know, we try to come up with something. Let's try to design our house, because we had just moved into our new place, and they struggled because they were used to they were going to go online to get some ideas of how to make this look like a toilet or make this look like whatever. And so, you know, I sort of have some push-pull there, because there seem to be a lot more prescribed things than there used to be. Like I said, I'm opening a can of worms at the end of our time, but I don't know, I felt compelled to say that, but so there's like good and bad, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, what we are seeing is that, I mean, kids are more looking, if they are playing with so much instruction related kind of toy lines, they are asking for it because they don't know what to do with the blank canvas. And that's not easy also. I mean, I have, in one of my workshop, it was really interesting. They were keep saying that, why didn't you bring these kind of instructions? I'm like, you are the one who is going to create it. And then I'm like, oh my God, did I do something totally wrong? It depends where they are coming from. It's the demographics are always very important when you are creating design, you know, designing for children, definitely.
Well, I know that we are sort of exceeding our time today, and but like I said, you have sparked so many things, certainly in me and others, and so I'm grateful for that. It's exactly what we hope from these conversations, that it's just the beginning.
Yes.
So thank you so much for opening the door. And the other thing I thought about, you mentioned packaging design. This is a little off topic, but I hope we are all together in person at Clemson next year, because packaging design is a huge major here at Clemson University. And I didn't even think about that as a connection to make. So I'm excited just to think about getting you here and engaging with just different communities that we have
I'd
here.
love to.
So,
That was amazing.
so cool. So cool. Things that we
Thank
never
you.
thought of. I mean, so thank you so much for your time, and thanks to all who are able to join us live. And we'll be sharing this recording so that our folks can watch it in their own time or watch it again and again. So I hope everyone continues to be well and safe and playful. And thank you, Yesim, for your time today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
And great to see you all.